listening to the Ones Ready podcast, a team of Air Force Special Operators forged in combat with over 70 years of combined operational experience, as well as a decade of selection instructor experience. If you're tired of settling and you want to do something you truly believe in, you're in the right place. Now here's your favorite CCT personality, JTAC extraordinaire, embracer of the ridiculous face, and like the shortest operator you'll ever meet, Peaches.
Do you guys like good gear, good quality gear that'll get you where you need to go? I know I do. Check out eberlystock.com. They have an entire range of rucksacks and apparel that'll help you, whether it's military, law enforcement, or even hunting. I particularly like the F1 mainframe because I like to load that thing down and I can swap out different rucks and throw it onto the frame and then just attach it. I also have the Switchblade too, which is a nice little 3-day ruck that'll get me going where I need to go. So great quality stuff, veteran owned. The owner is a prior Air Force A-10 pilot, great company. We really enjoy working with these folks because they, like I said, they produce some quality gear, and it's definitely worth your time going to check them out. And if you do that and you decide to check out, use the promo code OR10. That is OR10, and it'll get you a discount on all of their gear. And they've got rucksacks, apparel, among a whole bunch of other things. So definitely go check them out. eberlystock.com. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ones Ready podcast. You're in the team room. You got Aaron and I again. And man, it just seems like we're just crushing this content, but we'll keep it going. These early mornings, I mean, it's still dark out, dark and rainy out in the Pacific Northwest. You got to love it.
Yeah, it's actually rainy out here too. They're thinking they might get snow, so we're actually you're not supposed to do this on podcasts or media content, but we're doing this on Christmas Eve. It looks like it's going to snow out, so we'll see. It might be a white Christmas here in Albuquerque.
Could be, yeah,
could be.
Well, I tell you what, we're man, this is so random for the podcast, but we were watching YouTube, Donna and I, and it was Holmes in Las Vegas, and it's just seeing all the sun was just like, wow. Yeah. That's what I forgot what this is like.
Wow, exactly, right? Yep.
Yeah, but that's actually not what we came here to talk about today. This is going to be one of a series, whether this is number 1 or this is number 2, I'm not sure, but it's part of a series that we're kind of doing, that a 3-part series, maybe more, maybe we'll figure out some more, but based off of the Special Tactics mission sets. So if you're tracking, or if you're not tracking, you've got Global Access, Personnel Recovery, and Precision Strike. Those are the 3 primary mission sets that Special Tactics do. We go into some other realms as well, but these are like if you were going to write a Wikipedia page on what we do, those are the 3 primary things we do, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that are inherent to those tasks. So today, we're going to talk about Personnel Recovery with one by Aaron Love. So, as I introduce you to your own podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
I just like one by Aaron Love. Like,
yeah.
It's the old goggles, sand, wind, and dust.
Yeah, that's right. So, and for listeners, like I said, I don't know if this is going to be number 1, number 2, number 3, or whatever, but there is going to be some overlapping because all of these 3 mission sets really complement each other, and they overlap just like a Venn diagram. So some of the stuff you will hear again, but just bear with it. And I promise you that there's probably going to be little nuggets that Aaron or I put in here that we just didn't think about the last one. So, and this is also not an all-encompassing, there are other aspects that we 100% either forgot to mention, or we probably can't just due to some operational security and not busting any kind of classification. So with that said, personnel recovery, in your own words, Aaron, go.
All right, easy post. So personnel recovery inside of the Air Force. I'm going to start off with something that is completely unique about Air Force Special Operations. So Pararescue and personnel recovery, all the forces are actually supposed to be able to do their own personnel recovery, right? We have 9 tenets of SOF. This is a doctrinal thing. One of those tenets is direct action. These are just things that we do, right? Inside of direct action is personnel recovery, right? There's a whole joint pub on it. All the services are supposed to be able to do it. Like if the Army loses somebody or something and they need to get it back, the Army is supposed to be able to fix their own problems. In the Air Force, pararescue and combat rescue officer, like the pararescue career field, our personnel recovery entire enterprise, we're the only people that in the DoD that are specifically trained, equipped, employed, and deployed to do personnel recovery as a primary mission set for the entire time, right? So pararescue and combat rescue officers since 1966, when we put on that maroon beret and we had our own force, right? We evolved from the aerial rescue and recovery services, and we used to be backenders on helicopters, and we went through Vietnam, and we've evolved to where we are now. But personnel recovery is a very simple thing. It's we are there to bring anybody home or anything home. Like sometimes it's sensitive equipment, sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's whatever, it's an allied force member. Sometimes it's an American civilian. We are there to bring anybody home at any time in any situation. So personnel recovery, it is a soft tenet. It's a soft skill set. And I say soft as in special operations forces, but we are the only people that do it 24/7 here inside of the Air Force. And then inside of AFSOC, we have our own capability for personnel recovery. Poof, there we are. PJs at RQSs and ST making the personnel recovery mission happen for the Air Force. So, we'll start there, but it's anytime, anywhere, by any means necessary, we're going to access an area. So that's why everybody looks at us and like, oh, you guys it's so cool that you're free fall qualified and dive qualified. And you do all these, you work in extreme environments, like true Arctic environments in the jungle and the desert. Well, yeah, because things happen all over the world. And now when you're talking about space, oh, we go into space, baby. I've said it a bunch of times, like that domain is coming up and we're figuring out how to go to space as well. And then we have the support of the NASA mission as well. So we have all of those things that we do for personnel recovery, and poof, there you are. PJs, personnel recovery.
Man, you're lobbying hard to be the first, low Earth orbit free fall.
I want it so bad. It's the only reason I'm staying in shape, man. Like I could really hang this up and get a desk job somewhere, but I got to be honest with you, that space mission, it's so enticing.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, and you definitely need a controller on that too. PJs can't work the radios, so just
something. Yeah.
You're
telling me a PJ can't work the radio? They need to focus on medicine. Let me have the radio.
So one of the things that you hear about often, kind of that, and it's, to me, it's an old, an old acronym and an old name, but CSAR, Combat Search and Rescue. So, you guys still are doing combat search and rescue in some regards, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So PR, personnel recovery, is kind of the overarching term for everything we do, right? So personnel recovery is the entire enterprise that are doing, we're talking about a rescue triad to include all aircraft inside the DoD inventory, using everything at our disposal. Like PR is that overarching thing. When we talk about combat search and rescue, that was a term that was put specific, that we specifically put on ourselves, kind of, the GWAT, time frame. Like we perform combat search and rescue, and that's the mission of, going into hot LZs, going into contested denied environments, and finding an isolated person in order to bring them back. And I kind of talked about it earlier, but that can really be anybody. But the classic example of this is kind of the pilot punches out behind enemy lines, and we have to go through the 5 phases of recovery, right? Like, so it's report, locate, support, recover, reintegrate, right? Those are the 5 kind of things that we do. That's no kidding what you do there. And combat search and rescue is in that really like recover area. That's where you're actually going and getting the person and out. And if it's in a combat environment, perfect. Combat search and rescue. And you'll see there's other search and rescue forces out there. Like Navy has their SAR swimmers, search and rescue. We just do it in combat, which sets us apart from everybody else. We're not rescue swimmers. We're not in the Coast Guard. We're not AMTs. Like our job is combat. We are there to take people out of the worst possible environment, access that environment, whatever it is, and then bring them back.
Right. So, and that's one of the things that you guys, I'd like to point out is that, I think in one of the episodes that we talked to Gutierrez and I think some other folks about was, a QRF, a quick reaction force, right? That is a CSAR team, a traditional CSAR team is, 2 PJs, 1 controller. You could even, on the RQS side that don't have controllers, they're constructed a little bit differently, but it's still a small team. So a CSAR team is not a QRF. Are they extra guns to the fight? Can they bring, force multiplication and help out in a fight? Absolutely. But one thing they're not, at least as they are traditionally packaged is not a QRF.
Yeah, we're just not big enough to roll in and bring, you know, that equipment. If we're attached to a security team, we used to call it a SAR security team, a search and rescue security team. If we have an SST that's attached to us, and maybe we have a bigger force, sure, we can protect ourselves, and then we can get our mission. But yeah, we're not a quick reaction force. Doing reactive CSAR, like you mentioned, it's essentially like the QRF is here. So here's a problem. Okay, well, we need the QRF to come in. Well, if everything fails there and that you're like, hey, Hail Mary, we've lost somebody, or hey, somebody's really, really hurt, that's when you call the combat search and rescue team, or that's when you call the PJs. So that's how reactive CSAR works. Is big problem. It's way outside of our control. Maybe we have an aircraft that went down. Maybe we have an extrication problem. Maybe somebody's trapped, or maybe somebody's truly lost. Maybe somebody got left on the ground and we really don't know where they are. That's where we come in.
Yep. Exactly. But it's not limited to personnel. Like you brought up the pilot, typical pilot punches out behind enemy lines. Like that's one guy, but there's other aspects of it that you will go to. So when you're on a crash site and it's a sensitive crash site, you've already recovered a pilot. What else are you doing?
Well, so it comes into, we have equipment, technology, and things that we don't want to fall. We don't want to have those fall in enemy hands. So especially when you're for the pilot, we have manned and unmanned ISR assets, and there are pieces of equipment on board that aircraft that we do not want exploited by somebody to just pick it up. Because if you think, especially if you're looking, when we lose a drone in Afghanistan and GWAT, they're going to go and take that drone and strip it, but they're looking to sell that technology. They want to take these things and they want to sell it to one of our competitors. So it's important for us to make sure that that technology doesn't fall into somebody else's hands. So we're doing things like making sure, number one, that we're making the aircraft safe from munitions. And a lot of times that's where we'll ask, some options there, like, hey, there's a bunch of bombs on this thing. We're going to make sure that everybody's out and we're away from it. And then the controller is going to blow it in place and call fires in on it, right? But there are some other things, like there's communication suites, there are sensor cameras and sensor balls. All of those things, and this is not OPSEC, this is just common sense. All of the imagery, all of the information that those things are taken are housed on hard drives inside of that airplane. They're housed on radios, they're housed in computers. We have to either take those with us or destroy them in place to make sure they can't be exploited by personnel recovery. Remember that overarching umbrella. We think about that pilot punch out behind enemy lines where we have to get somebody back to friendly control. Sometimes that thing that's so important is actually a piece of equipment that we don't want to fall into the wrong hands. So we've gone after, there are many good stories about PJ teams getting spun up to both jump into the ocean to go get a drone, to something crashed, right out. There was a time in Iraq where, something crashed right outside of base. And we were just like, oh man, we got to go get this drone, before the civilians get it to it because it was armed. And then two, before anybody else could exploit that stuff.
Yeah. And a lot of, the mindset is that a lot of these crashes, whether they're, remote piloted the aircraft or they're, pilots punching out, but, you tend to think that they're happening way, way deep in enemy lines. But, the most critical, phase of flight, if you will, are takeoff and landings. Believe it, for all the folks that didn't know that, most critical phase of flight is during takeoff and landing. So you'd be surprised how many of these recoveries actually take place a couple miles outside of base where they took off from. Like, it's just the reality of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But so that's combat. Transition a little bit to the humanitarian side of the house. So HATR events, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief. What are some of the ways that personnel recovery really fit into, to me, the kind of obvious, like, hey, it's a HATR event. There's going to be personnel recovery, post-hurricane, tornado, earthquake, tsunami, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But like, what are some of the things that we would do in terms of personnel recovery in a HATR event?
Well, this is really interesting too, because it's specific only to us. Like we really are some of the only people that do this when we respond to a national event. So the easy ones are, Hurricane Katrina. There were thousands of saves that the pararescue teams did down there. You look at the Haiti earthquake. So not only did we open the airfield in Haiti, but there were, if you think about, I think it was like 1988. So remember when the earthquake hit during the World Series and all the bridges collapsed in California? It was during the Oakland A's. So the PJ team from Moffett were actually out there cutting through concrete and searching for people. When you look at these tornadoes that just ripped through Kentucky. The PJ team was there searching for people, and that was an extreme collapse structure event, right? The searching an area and finding people. And then if you look at the pandemic from 2020 all the way till now, I believe there are PJs working around the clock at step down units in New York. So while that's not like a true Hatter event, these are things that we can provide because of our skill set, right? We're able to work alone without a doctor constantly looking over our shoulder, because that's what we do in combat. And when you start looking at a Hatter event, so hurricanes, earthquakes, even with this pandemic that we were working through and all these other things, we provide a very unique skill set, and we are highly valuable because of the autonomy. You don't need to tell us what to do a whole lot. We can look and go, oh, all these people are sick and I need to find a way to organize all of these people. Okay, I'm going to go do. Oh, there's a collapse structure and you have no idea how to get in here. Well, I have a bunch of tools and I have this specific training. I can access areas that you can't access. It makes us highly valuable in a Hatter scenario. And that civilian mission. So the Guard and Reserves always have a civilian mission, and we talked about it on one of the other ones, but we maintain an alert commitment. There's always a PJ team on there. It's a joke inside of the PJ community is if you just stick your head out of the window and yell loud enough, there's a PJ team that'll eventually come to you. That's really, it's funny, but it's actually true. There's a team right now that's on worldwide alert. Every single team in every single state, whether it's ACC or ST or Guard or Reserve, there's a team of PJs right now that are ready to go do stuff at a moment's notice. We are constantly ready for that call, which is really cool. Like that's one of the really cool parts of our career field is that, right now here in Albuquerque, my friend, Chief Rubio, if Chief Rubio was like, dude, we have a rescue that we need to go on. I'm like, hey man, I might need a little bit of gear, but I'm ready. Let's go. That's a cool thing. And Hatter kind of falls into that area, and it's inherent only to us. So these other, SAR rescue swimmers and Navy, Navy rescue swimmers or other people that do kind of jobs that sort of look the same. They don't have that. They don't have that posture, and they don't have that response.
Yeah, and we do a whole multitude of things during that. You're talking about airdrops for resupplies, medical supplies, food, water. Even if like, hey, the jaws of life broke, which is very rare, but extra batteries for the reciprocating saws, that kind of stuff. Like, we will do airdrops for that. We'll do evacuations. We'll bring in more people, on an airfield or on a helicopter or something like that. Get people out. So we've got the evacuation piece of it. I already brought up supplies, it's just getting people in and getting people out. And a lot of times, with a Haiti situation, there's a lot of Americans that need to get out. It's just It's just reality of it. It's not like, hey, that's your problem. We're not involved in it, because we're there to help. It's just, when you start talking about Department of State type stuff, like American citizens, they can have the option to stay, but oftentimes they've just got to get out of there and let the local government handle their own business too.
Right. And those are called non-combatant evacuation operations. And it's something that we train to. Like, we work with Department of State. Like, so for NEOs is typically what we call them. We had a joke in the 321st, as you're well aware. Every spring, as soon as Africa started heating up, we were going to play to do a NEO. You know what I mean? Like, we have that specific skill set, and it's extremely, extremely complex, because there's people spread to the four winds. When I was in Africa, there are American citizens that lived all over Kenya, and there's essentially a big list that you get from the Department of State. And we're like, hey, if we need to flush everybody here for some reason, we have to get all these people together. Well, PJs are the people to do that. Like, we do non-combatant evacuation operations. When you look at what happened in HKIA, who were the people on the ground that were making that happen in a real sense? The PJ team. You know what I mean? Like, we have those things as part of our thing. We get hit all the time. We say that we're a jack of all trades. People forget what that whole statement actually is. A jack of all trades is better than a master of one. Essentially, we love the fact that we have all of these skill sets. So it's a funny thing in the soft community, be like, oh, every PJ is a jump master. Every PJ does NEO. Every PJ does this. Every PJ does that. Well, you guys aren't good at any one thing. Well, yeah, but we're great at a whole bunch of things, because we need to be able to, every single PJ, and like, when you're a team leader, you need to be able to throw anything out of a plane on time, on target, safely, to support operations on the ground, whether that be a non-combatant evacuation operation, whether it be a hurricane response, or whether it be true combat.
Yep, absolutely. And man, I kind of screwed us a little bit just because I'm jumping all over the place here. Going back to a deployed situation real quick. When we do key leader engagements and stuff like that, and we go into a village to meet people and provide, food, water, humanitarian stuff in a deployed environment, what are you guys doing from a medical standpoint?
So nobody says no to medicine. That's the easiest way to gain hearts and minds to win that human terrain. So you have to really study up on that clinical medicine. You really have to get your game together. That's not our lane. It's definitely more of a civil affairs lane when we talk about medical civil affairs programs or med caps. But when we go to these places, you can actually win a ton of things over just by going inside of their medical facilities and saying, hey, this is good or this is bad, or let us help you with this. And then the fact that they know, a lot of times they'll call you doctor and whatever else. And we're obviously not doctors.
Not a doctor.
Not a doctor. Not even close. And, when you look at an 18 Delta or somebody that really is just completely focused on some of those clinical medicine or some of those far forward indigenous medicine types, I would never say that we're on par with that, but we do provide that capability to support what it is that we need to do, right? Working in concert with those people, we can be that far forward medical provider, or at least put a medical face to a tactical operation.
Yep, absolutely. So the next kind of three things I wanted to hit, and we'll start off, but in my mind, these are kind of things that PJs really, really excel at. I mean, you guys are great at doing all the other stuff, which there's history of that, so I don't need to revisit it. But like when I think and I try to describe, what is a PJ compared to an 18 Delta or a SEAL Corpsman or something like that, like these are the three things that I go, this is it. So one of them is high angle rescue. Can you go over what high angle rescue is?
Sure. Yeah. So anytime you're talking about high angle, so it's literally just like there's definitions of what it is. Like medium angle, I think, is up to it's 30 to 45 degrees or something. And then high angle is anything that is technically challenging above like a 45-degree angle, right? So typically what we're referring to there is any terrain that is so steep that you need to be roped in. So you need to rope and climb through things. Like you can't just walk up it. So high angle rescue and that roped rescue or that mountain rescue thing is typically what we're talking about there as an aspect of our technical rescue capability. So that's just like a flavor. Inside of technical rescue, there's a bunch of different categories for what it is makes up a technical rescue specialist that we have training on. And, that's everything from extrication to all this other stuff. But high angle or working in a mountainous environment is one of those things that we hang our hat on. And that could be anything from truly, I've had a couple of scenarios where we've hung a pilot, but we've hung people over cliffs, over 200-foot cliffs, and you have to somehow access that pilot. You have to somehow get to them, provide them medical care, and then bring them up. The only way to do so is through very intricate rope systems and very sketchy. I'm terrified of heights, by the way. I hate
what a terrible
heights.
job to be part of.
Dude, it's the worst. It is the worst. I am the safest guy on a mountain you have ever seen. You know why? I am triple clipped in, and I'm like the team. I'm not the team leader. I turn into the team mom. I'm like, are you okay? You need to be safe. Are you clipped in?
Here's some cookies.
Hey guys, I brought orange slices. Is everybody feeling okay? But for that technical rescue, that high angle piece, it's super complicated, and you'll die. Tons of people die climbing every single year. Now imagine doing that in an environment where you could get shot. And that sounds like hyperbole, but imagine being on a 10, 12,000 foot cliff in Afghanistan and somebody slips and falls, and now they're on a ledge that's, overlooking a huge drop, and you're in combat and you have to figure out how to find an anchor, do it tactically, access that person and get them. And sometimes it's not even, that high angle. You think high angle all the time, but when we go on ships, there's a lot of stories of guys that have to access ships, and we have to use our rope knowledge in order to bring a patient up. If that patient is out or in a litter or whatever, we have to find a way to navigate through there. And you do it with your high angle skills or your rope rescue skills, and building rope systems and being lead climbers and all of these other things play into it. So that's a very specific skill set that we have. And you're totally right. When I explain what a PJ is to people, I don't compare us to anybody else, because again, comparison breeds adversarial talk, right? I don't compare us. it's common for people to be like, well, we're like Navy SEALs, but we have medicine, or well, it's like being an Army Ranger medic, but we do this rope thing too. It's not true. We shoot, we move, we communicate, we lead. That's what all special operators do. But then we have gold standard technical rescue. We are technical rescue specialists. We know how to access patients in environments of all types, and we're the masters at it. And then we provide gold level combat medicine.
It's funny. I didn't even think about that. Like, I've been on ships and stuff like that, and we've been doing other training on ships, but I've never been on a ship during an exercise or in real world where we put a medical scenario, or there is a medical scenario that is not, on the deck. So I didn't even consider, doing rope systems to work that. But I mean, like we talk about, I know that you and I were on an exercise out in Norway, me, you, Ibby, and Nick the Bod.
Nick the Bod, yeah.
Yeah, we got a notification, and this was an exercise, notification that an F-16 pilot had punched out somewhere in the mountains. We jump into a frozen lake DZ. We snowshoe, which maybe we should have done something else.
Terrible.
But
that movement, I remember
awful.
looking at Nick during that movement, and we had to switch people that were breaking and going up over the 4 or 5 terrain features. I remember looking at Nick one time, and he looked at me and he was just like,
"Yeah,
this is that real stuff, huh?" And I was just like, "Whew."
And full disclosure, because I'm going to be transparent, because everybody knows that I'm self-deprecating, but like the one guy that did not break trail the entire time because the snow was way too high was this guy. So imagine if you had to, like, for everybody out there, imagine if you had to break trail except it was up to your waist, whereas everybody else, it was up to their knees, right? Mm-hmm. That is why I did not break trail. Okay. But yeah. I mean, we did that movement in the mountains up to this cliff, and they, no kidding, hung a dude over the side of a cliff. Like that's ballsy for that guy. Like, kudos to him. But I mean, usually if we're going to hang somebody over a cliff, we're going to hang a dummy. But they kidding hung a dude off the side of the cliff. And then so rescued him. I did the controller part. And then I can't remember if I did or Ibby, but it doesn't matter. Great exercise, great fun, real world experience, that translate in the real world. So great time. So moving on to the other one. Oh, what's up?
Real quick. I just want to make a point. Like, that's what makes Pararescue and really ST, like that's what makes AFSOC different. There's tons of really, really good rescue teams that work out in the real world, right? Those guys can use quads to drive all their gear in. They can drive, there's no weight requirements, whatever. We had what we jumped in with. We had to rescue that guy after that movement. And we had to, like, by the way, we had food, water for 72 hours. We had sleep systems. We had our own medical gear. We had our own radios. And oh, by the way, we had a minimal amount of technical rescue equipment, in this case, high angle rescue equipment, but we had to jump it in, right? That's when people are like, oh, well, you guys are rescue specialists. That's a whole, listen, everything is man packable. You have to be able to do it out of your ruck.
Yeah. That whole everything's man packable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Moving on. So swiftwater rescue. That is something that I believe is also pretty inherent. I mean, in the civilian sector, you have certain, I think they would be firefighters or maybe even their wildlife service, something like that are trained in it. But this is definitely something that is inherent to pararescue.
Yeah, and it's part of our upgrade. This isn't something that we just go do. Like, no kidding, in your 5-level upgrade, you have to go to a swiftwater course. And oh, by the way, we do all kinds of water environments, because again, we don't get to pick where these problems are. And if you think about why do you do swiftwater rescue, some of the most dangerous things that you can do is cross a river, especially on attack, in combat, in tactics, in anything you want to talk about. When you start talking about we have to cross this river, that's a whole thing. You need somebody that can look at this and go, okay, this is the best part, and here's where we're going to put our safety, and here's where the throw bag should go, and here's where we're going to tie back and stay away from this area because it's dangerous. We have to be able to do that. And then if somebody gets trapped, or if something is happening, like, stuck in a strainer, or if we have to do a body recovery, you'll kill the rescuer, period. Like, you will lose the guy that goes into that unless you have extensive training. So it just goes with the anytime, anywhere mindset that we have. And, I had a good input from a commander of one of the SMUs that I shared an apartment with for like 2 weeks, because he was there and I was there and we were sharing the same apartment while we were doing stuff. He had a really good quote about PJs that I've always internalized. Is he's like, if there's anybody that I want at a table, I want a PJ there, because for 90% of my problems, you guys have the answer. for every single thing that I like, all these wacky contingencies. Hey, I got to cross a river. How are we going to do this? PJ, what you got? Hey, we're going to be walking in this mountain. We might need to rope everybody together to get across this. Hey, PJ, what you got? We're going to cross a glacier. Hey, PJ, what you got?
Always got carabiners. That's what you guys got.
So many carabiners.
Always,
and I got
always
ropes.
carrying carabiners.
Oh, look at it. Oh, what's this rope for?
Yeah, that's the joke for you guys that don't know. They're free.
Always.
PJs have always got carabiners.
Always. Oh, you're a PJ? Okay, name every knot ever then.
Yeah. Build me a 3-to-1 like that. Yeah.
Immediately go.
Yeah. So the other aspect that I think is very PJ specific is kind of the ocean rescue. I mean, yeah, you have the Navy SAR, you have the Coasties as well, but when we talk about middle of the ocean, nobody's out there. You're kind of your duck butt mission type set. I mean, throwing out a Ram-Z or a Ram-B out in the middle of the ocean because whether it's an aircraft went down or there's a sick sailor or a capsized vessel or something like that is very PJ specific.
Yeah, and it happens all the time. So I'll just tell my own story. So 2009 or 2010, I think it had to be 2009. I had just gotten to the 321st. We were training a little bit down south. I think I'd been a PJ for about 6 months. So I guess this had to be about 2009. But there was a sick sailor that was in the North Sea that was, 400 miles off the coast of Ireland or off the coast of England. So in a C-130, we had people with 2 Rams packages that were ready to throw those boats out and then go and go to the thing. And then I was on the 60s. And just because of weather, the 60s ended up being the people to do it. So we went out into the open ocean. They hoisted us down. We packaged this guy up, provided him medical care, came back up and brought him back home. But when you look at some of the things that the Moffett guys have done, the Moffett guys just had one of the most intricate rescues that they did, where they actually jumped from the minimum level that they could accept for risk, flew, were recovered by that bigger vessel, and then they spent 5 days treating a traumatic amputation of a guy that had he essentially got his leg trapped in between 2 huge pieces of equipment. I think it was 2 boats that they were putting on, and they had to jump a PJ team in there. But we have a long history of that open ocean. When you look at what the Cocoa Beach and NASA space shuttle mission looks like, the Earth is 70% water. If something happens with a manned space shuttle, it's probably going to land in the water. So they train in rough seas with minimum personnel. Getting to that person, number one, is sometimes half the battle. And then number two, being able to work in that environment is really, really hard. But again, it's one of those things where we train to it, and those specific teams that have those specific missions, they train to it at such a high level.
And you, like how you just glossed over it. So PJ, we talked about it in a different episode, and we'll talk about it again in this one, but like PJ trauma, and this is my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, probably not long-term field care. You guys do it, but that's not your bread and butter. And man, for those guys to treat him for 5 days, that's a long time.
I'm gonna call you down. We've been focusing on long-term field care, like that tyranny of distance. Like it is a huge thing. Like we focus on it way more because, and again, not to compare, but Ranger medics are awesome at their field care. Okay, but I don't have a battalion of people with me. Like if you look at some of these missions, like guys have spent 5, 6, 7 days. There are missions even in Afghanistan where they were unable to be recovered for 48 hours, 72 hours, and they're managing that patient alone with no help for 72 hours. Like that's a completely different level of care. But we focus on it a lot, and it's a completely different game, and you have to be able to step your game up. And oh, by the way, you're going to jump there with a small team and you have to you got what you got. If you don't bring those things to support that patient, the patient's going to die.
Yeah, it's it's a lot of pressure, but and then going back to the SpaceX NASA thing, right? Man, the ocean is unforgiving, just like nature is unforgiving, and
terrifying. Yeah. I'm also scared of the ocean.
Funny enough, there's a lot of things that are under me when I'm up on the surface swimming. There's a lot of things.
I just have to pretend. So Brian and I'll let Brian tell this story too, but I distinctly remember being about 20 miles off the coast of San Diego. It was completely dark at night. We were doing work with the helicopters. The helicopters push off. We're in 10-foot rolling seas. We're lit up like Christmas trees so you can see us. Well, guess what else that attracts? Sharks. What's off the coast? What's off the coast of California? Great whites.
Big
so
sharks.
there are Brian and I at night, just in great white territory, lit up like Christmas trees with helicopters that sound like a school of fish. And I'm just like, you know what? This is it. I just got to pretend there's nothing else here. But there it is.
That's the most intimidating part is, one, you're not at the top of the food chain anymore, and then you have no idea what's underneath you. But you got to be okay with it. You just got to go, hey, all right, whatever.
Okay,
no big deal.
Here we go.
Yeah, can't do anything about it anyway. So
right.
May as well not worry about it. But yeah, so yeah, and that's the thing. You know, you get sick sailor on a vessel. You get the NASA thing, manned mission. Like, they need help. You're going out. You know, the weather isn't probably just because things went bad, and that's just the way things go. The weather's probably not going to be ideal. Neither is the sea state, but you got to get out there because that's what we do.
Well, and if you think about it too, I explain this to young guys, it's never going to be a good time to go. People don't call you for help. Like, people don't think forward and think, hey, this is going to be a problem, because they would have been able to avoid the problem, right? The weather's going to be terrible. The combat situation is going to be the worst possible that you can ever go into. The patients are going to be close to dying by the time you get there. Like, you're going to be so far down. By the time they finally go, oh God, we need the PJ team, it's already the worst scenario possible. It's
too
already
late, brother.
Too late, brother. Let's go. Like, you don't get to choose the time and the place, right? Like, you're going to have to go to that scenario.
Yeah. And you know, that's it's not, I don't say this to denigrate all the amazing actions that have happened in Afghanistan, Iraq, Africa, and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, all these decorations that you hear about, it's because things went wrong and people got put into situations that were not good, and they did extraordinary things. That's all it is, right? So again, that's not diminishing what the folks have done, but it is because a bad situation happened. It's just the reality of it. But
100%.
So parting shots about personnel recovery.
Listen, personnel recovery is it's my favorite mission, right? It's what I connected to the entire time, and it's why I wanted to be a PJ. Personnel recovery is an overarching term, right? Like we talked about, it can be a million different things. The reason why personnel recovery is so awesome, and the reason why I love it, is because you have to be able to think on your feet and fix problems. It is the biggest problem set. When I look at you and I go, this is impossible, pararescue men look you back in the face and they go, no, it's not. Watch this. You go, there's a guy on top of a mountain. He's dying. He's hung over the side of a cliff. You can't access him. You're going to have to hold on to this patient for 72 hours. You're going to have to fight your way in, or hopefully sneak your way in, get this guy, and then somehow get out. And oh, by the way, the only way that you can get in is to hey-ho. Holy cow. That is a problem set that I want to try to solve. And when you look at, all these other things, hey, there was an earthquake. We have lost 200 people, and 100 of those people are trapped in a high-rise building, and there's nobody else that can access these people. Watch this. Watch how I can affect this scenario. So that's the best part of being inside of the personnel recovery area, or working personnel recovery for me, is that, it sucks because you deal with a lot of death. You deal with a lot of times where the situation is too bad you couldn't help, and you lose patience, and that sucks. But I got to be honest with you, there's nothing more rewarding than dedicating your life to the simple motto that we have, which is, that others may live. I'm here to respond no matter what time, what place, what situation, and I'm going to go there knowing full well that my job is to get them out, and I might not come out. That's pretty righteous, man. I really dig that.
And on that note, we'll wrap it up. Make sure you slide into our DMs or shoot us an email at info@onesready.com. Visit us on our website, buy some merch. We've got a whole mixture of t-shirts, hoodies, hats, stickers, all that kind of good stuff. And then if you're following us on YouTube, or if you're watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and then make sure you're following all four of us. Well, follow all four of us and the Ones Ready account on Instagram. Appreciate you tuning in. Later.
Cheers. Train hard.